Shalom, brothers and sisters. My name is Yeshaya Yisrael of the tribe of Dan of the nation of Israel. I want to give honor and due respect to the Creator and the Maker of heaven and earth, the Most High Power. This presentation is called The History of the Israelites as it relates to the world. The purpose in this presentation is to show the fact that the Israelites that you read of in the Bible were, one, a real people, two, had relations and dealings with other nations. That the same nations that the Israelites spoke of were in many cases, and in some cases, spoken of by those same nations. That is the point in this presentation here. Later on in this presentation, I want to address a matter regarding black women or black females' names as far as it relating to the Hebrew language. So, I ask people to subscribe to the channel, get your pens, your paper, because this kind of presentation is brought straight from scholarship and from the heart, giving honor and praise unto the Most High. A presentation brought to you from Yeshaya Yisrael. Subscribe to the channel. Shalom Yisrael. The channel being More Yeshaya Hebrew Lessons. Shalom. The kings of the northern kingdom, meaning the northern kingdom of Israel. We're going to read from the left-hand side first. Jeroboam, Nadab, Baasha, Elah, Zimri, Tibni, Omri, mentioned by Shalmaneser III. Ahab, mentioned by Shalmaneser III. Ahaziah, Jehoram, Yehu, mentioned by Shalmaneser III. Yehoahaz, Yehoash, Jeroboam II, Zechariah, Shalom, Menachem, mentioned by Tiglath-Pileser III. Pekahiah, Pekah, mentioned by Tiglath-Pileser III. And Hoshea, mentioned by Tiglath-Pileser III. Now, this, what you see here is the list of the kings of Israel. Looking at it, brothers and sisters, on the left-hand side, where you see where it says mentioned by Shalman, I put only Shalman as opposed to Shalmaneser for space purpose reasons. Shalmaneser III was a king of Assyria, all right? And he ruled, brothers and sisters, in the 9th century BCE. Omri is mentioned by him inside of the writings of such. Ahab is the son and successor of Omri, and Ahab is the husband of Jezebel, okay? The Zidonian woman. This particular Ahab is mentioned by Shalmaneser III as well. The ones that we see there on the right-hand side, Yehu, when it says mentioned by Shalmaneser III, there's what they refer to as the black obelisk of Yehu, with him prostrating down before the king of Assyria. Then the next one you see here, Menahem, or Menachem in Hebrew, mentioned by Tiglath-Pileser III. Tiglath-Pileser III is also known in history as Pulu, P-U-L-U, all right? And he ruled in Babylon as well as in Assyria, all right? And he mentioned in his record Menahem. He also mentioned Pekah, and he also mentioned Hoshea. Now, for all those references, you can go to a book, brothers and sisters, called Ancient Near East in Text, edited by James Pritchard. And that's where you will see where Shalmaneser III, as well as Tiglath-Pileser III, mentions some of the kings of Israel. Now, when you're looking at this here, and it says the kings of the northern kingdom, it is talking about, as stated earlier, the northern kingdom of Israel. Okay? Now, Jeroboam, Nadab, Baasha, Elah, Zimri, Timni, Omri, Ahab, Ahaziah, Jehoram, Yehu, Jehoahaz, Jehoash, Jeroboam II, Zechariah, Shalom, Menahem, Pequakiah, Pequak, and Hoshea. All of these kings' names I'm going to put in the description where you can press on it and see the video where all of these different kings are written out in Hebrew and the meaning of their names. All right, subscribe to that channel as well, called Yeshaya Yisrael Hebrew Lessons. Next slide, please. The matter with Omri and Ahab and Assyria. It says he brought along to help him 10,000 foot soldiers of Hamath, 10,000 foot soldiers of Ahab the Israelite, Ahabu Sirilah. This is from the battle of Karkar, spelled with a K or a Q, during the era of the 9th century BCE. Shalmaneser III, who had war with the Arameans, all right, it is mentioned in there that Ahab the Israelite brought with him 10,000 foot soldiers. Now, Ahab had a father, Omri, who had a father, you understand? So when people attempt to, in layman terms, attempt to discredit the history and the authenticity and the reality of the Israelites' existence, how can that be the case when you have people who were enemies of the Israelites speaking of the Israelites? When your enemies are able to record you in their own record, it shows that you must have some kind of validity, all right, of existence. So this is what we just want to point out in regards to Ahab, okay? Now on the right-hand side, it says, the tribute of Yehu, son of Omri. I received from him silver, gold, a golden bowl, a golden vase, and pointed bottom, golden tumblers, golden buckets, 10, a staff for a king. So it said the tribute of Yehu, the son of Omri. Now, this is something we just want to point out, brothers and sisters, once it comes down to this, because this is what Shalmaneser III wrote about the people we know and understand in the scriptures as far as being the Israelites. All right? Speaking of them, one being Ahab, the other one being Yehu. All right? So let's go on to the next slide. Thank you. You may want to look up the Battle of Karkar and the Israelites' influence and such. Next slide. The matter of Omri and Yehu. One of the 11 dynasties of ancient Israel is that of the Omride dynasty from itself, Omri to the king Yehu. Here we see him bow down due to his wickedness to the Assyrian ruler Shalmaneser III. So the black obelisk of Yehu that I spoke of earlier is what you're able to see here on the right-hand side. Brothers and sisters, this has been confirmed in archaeology. All right, let's go on to the next slide. Thank you. From Menahem to Hoshea and the Assyrians. As for Menahem, I overthrew him like a snowstorm, and he fled like a bird. I imposed on him tribute, gold, silver, and linen garments with multicolored trimmings. They, the Israelites, overthrew their king Pekah, and I placed Hoshea as king over them, and I received tribute from them. What you just read and what was read to you on the left-hand side, brothers and sisters, is the record of the Assyrians, speaking about the Israelites as we spoke of Menahem, king of Israel, being mentioned by Tiglath-Pileser III of Assyria. The northern kingdom of Israel came to an end when the Assyrians were coming up as a power in the 8th century BCE under the rulers Tiglath-Pileser III, Shalmaneser V, Sargon, who actually took credit for defeating the Israelites. Now we're going to go in the scriptures and go into the book of 2 Kings 17, okay, so we can gain some understanding for edification purposes. 2 Kings chapter 17, verse 1, all right, and it reads as follows. 2 Kings 17:1. In the 12th year of Ahaz, king of Judah, began Hoshea, the son of Elah, to reign in Samaria over Israel 9 years. And he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord, not as the kings of Israel that were before him. Against him came up Shalmaneser, king of Assyria, and Hoshea became his servant and brought him presents. And the king of Assyria found conspiracy in Hoshea, for he had sent messengers to So, king of Egypt, and brought no present to the king of Assyria, as he had done year by year. Therefore the king of Assyria shut him up and bound him in prison. Then the king of Assyria came up throughout all the land, and went up to Samaria and besieged it 3 years. And the 9th year of Hoshea, the king of Assyria took Samaria and carried Israel away into Assyria, and placed them in Halah and in Habor by the river of Gozan and in the cities of the Medes. So that right there, brothers and sisters, is just something we want to point out for edification purposes. Tiglath-Pileser is the king that you read of there, actually subduing the tribes of Israel. But inside of the Assyrian record, it was actually the guy Sargon who took credit for such. All right? Because you just read in the book of Second Kings, when he said he besieged it for 3 years, Tiglath-Pileser did the besieging starting in 725 BCE, but it wasn't completed to 722 BCE. All right, so his successors continued what their predecessors have done and took the credit for besieging the Israelites. So this is just something we want to point out for edification purposes, brothers and sisters. All right. Next slide. The southern kingdom of Judah. Rehoboam, Abijah, Asa, Jehoshaphat, Jehoram, Ahaziah, Ataliah, Jehoash, Amaziah, Uzziah, Jotam, Ahaz, mentioned by Tiglath-Pileser III, Hezekiah, mentioned by Sennacherib V, Manasseh, mentioned by Esarhaddon, Ammon, Josiah, Jehoiakaz, Jehoiakim, Jehoiachin, mentioned by Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon, and Zedekiah. So these are the kings that ruled in the southern kingdom of Judah. Now, as we already know, after the death of Solomon, you had the northern kingdom and then the southern kingdom. All right? The kings that we went over prior to this slide here were the kings that ruled in the northern tribes, all right, or the northern kingdom. There was 11 dynasties altogether. However, with the southern kingdom, from Rehoboam all the way down to Zedekiah, is one dynasty. All of these are people who are related directly one to another, all right? So this is something we just want to point out, brothers and sisters, for edification purposes, all right? Now, when you look at the right-hand side and you see Jehoiakim, and then you see Jehoiachin. Jehoiachin, as stated, is mentioned by the Babylonians. All right. When he was taken captive, his uncle was named, who was named Mattaniah, was renamed Zedekiah by the Babylonians, and then he was put on the throne. All right. So this is just something we want to point out. All of the people that ruled from Rehoboam all the way down to Zedekiah, be they righteous or wicked, be they being subdued or not, they were all of the seed of David. All right. So also, in this particular presentation, I went over in a lesson about the definition of the kings of Judah. Subscribe to that channel when you see it posted. Next slide. From Ahaz to Hezekiah and the Assyrians. I received the tribute from Jehoiahaz of Judah, stated by Tiglath-Pileser III in the 8th century BCE. Now, what you're seeing right here, brothers and sisters, is a cuneiform aspect of writing in which it says Kazaki Au, Kazaki Ao, Hezekiah in transliteration. All right? Ayud Dei, Ayud Dei. That's the best way I could pronounce the Assyrian way of Judah. Now, not being disrespectful or offensive, even if you notice when the understanding of Judah is said inside of Assyrian language, you will notice, brothers and sisters, that the D does not drop out. This becomes important because when we speak about the aspect of the European Jewish people, they do not emphasize on why Judah, Yahudah, became Jew, because there's no Hebrew word for Jew, because the Dalet or the D sound in Hebrew never drops. Even when you transliterate it, even to the Assyrian language or the Babylonian language and so forth, it still retains the sound of the D within it. So where do we get the word Jew from? All right, but this is just something we just want to point out for edification purposes. Getting back to the point of the presentation, from Ahaz to Hezekiah and the Assyrians. Looking at this right here, he said that he received tribute from Jehoiahaz of Judah. All right, you may want to look this up because Jehoiahaz is the same as Ahaz. All right, mentioned by the Assyrian king Tiglath-Pileser III. Next slide. Judah and the Assyrians. What you're looking at on the left-hand side is an image of Israelites being taken into the Assyrian captivity. Of course, we already went over the aspect of them having black-like hair features such as cornrows or so forth from what we are able to see in that particular regard. What you're looking at on the right-hand side is a clearer image of the Israelites being led into captivity. Both of these come from the wall of Sennacherib, the king of Assyria. All right, these are not Sumerians, brothers and sisters. These are people of the tribe of Judah being led captive to the land of the Assyrians. This is commemorated, brothers and sisters, by, as stated, the king Sennacherib coming into the land of Judah, namely into the city of Lachish, taken captive of such. Next slide. Thank you. Manasseh, king of Judah. I called up the kings of the country of Hatti, and on the other side of the Euphrates, Balu, king of Tyre, Manasseh, king of Judah, Iudi. This is coming from a record left in a book called Ancient Near East, Volume 1 by James Pritchard, page 201. So you may want to go on Amazon and look up that book. It's available on there. Both Esarhaddon and Ashur-bani-pal mention Manasseh among their vassals. Now, when you go in the scriptures in the book of Chronicles, it talks about Manasseh, king of Judah, being led into captivity by Esarhaddon. So this is something we can correlate. Now, you can go and get the Bible Dictionary by Grant and Raleigh and look that up on page 616. So we just want to sit there and state the reasons why we're going into this kind of subject and the sources that we're coming from in this particular regard. Just like the Hebrew classes, everything that is written that you see and everything that you hear holds the same amount of weight. As I stated, you may want to get your pens and your paper because we're coming scholastically in this, giving honor and praise unto the Most High. Jehoiachin and Nebuchadnezzar. This is the record speaking of Jehoiachin of Yehudu or Jehoiachin of Judah. All right, so let's go on to the next slide. Jehoiachin, king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, in the year 597 BCE, took Judah captive. Ezekiel was among those taken into captivity. Daniel was among those taken into captivity. The translation we saw earlier says this: 10 seller of oil from Yahukin of Yehudu, Jehoiachin of Judah. So you may want to look that up about Jehoiachin mentioned inside of the records of Nebuchadnezzar. Jehoiachin was 18 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned in Jerusalem 3 months. And his mother's name was Nehushta, the daughter of El-Natan of Jerusalem. And Jehoiachin, king of Judah, went out to the king of Babylon, he and his mother, and his servants, and his princes, and his officers. And the king of Babylon took him in the 8th year of his reign, meaning in the 8th year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar. All right, so looking at this right here, what we just read on the right-hand side comes from the book of 2 Kings chapter 24. All right, next slide. Thank you. Summation. The fall of the kingdoms of Israel is not the end of the Israelites. One fault many have concerning the Israelites is that they only were around the time when they were a kingdom. However, when the Babylonian kingdom fell to Persia, we see the Israelites written not only in the Bible history, but also in a record from Persia as Yahud, a province. The Murashu records of Persia as well speaks of the Israelites. When Persia fell to the Greeks, we see the Israelites in what is referred to as the Zenon Papyrus. When the Greeks lost to the Romans, we see the Israelites in what is referred to as the Hellenos Papyrus. So you may want to look up these kind of sources, the Hellenos Papyrus, the Zenon Papyrus, as well as the Murashu records. All of them speak of the Israelites, and this is why I call this the history of the Israelites as it relates to the world. All right, let's go on to the next slide. Thank you. Summation part 2. Concerning the Israelites in the matter with the Romans, the historian Tacitus spoke of the besieging that Titus did, in which Josephus later spoke of the triumph sent to Rome from Egypt of the Israelites in 73 CE, or some as say AD, but we generally like to say CE, but it's the same timeline for the most part. In 73 CE, there was a matter with Masada. In 115 to 117 CE, there was a matter with the Kittos battle. In 132 to 135 CE, there was a matter with Bar Kokhba. So this is just something, brothers and sisters, we want to point out for edification purposes. All right? As stated, you may want to get your pens, your paper, and write down Tacitus and the Israelites. Josephus, the besieging of Jerusalem by the Romans, as Josephus recanted. Pardon me, as he spoke about. Not recanted. Sorry about that. So this is just something we want to show for edification purposes. You may want to look up Masada, the Kittos battle, as well as Bar Kokhba. All right, next slide. Thank you. History and captivity of Israel explain dates, names, and places. Let's go. So that way we can gain an understanding of what we're talking about. This is part 2 of what we're going to get into in this particular regard. All right. Let's go to Deuteronomy 28, verse 68. All right. So we can gain some understanding of what we're talking about for edification purposes. Deuteronomy 28, verse 68 says the following. And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships, by the way whereof I spoke unto thee. Thou shalt see it no more again. And there you shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. Now, this is what I'm reading from is out of the King James, the Bible version that most people use. We already expounded upon that instead of it saying you shall be sold to your enemies, it should say you shall sell yourselves to your enemies. But getting back into this particular aspect, part 2 of the presentation, when it says history and captivity of Israel, explain dates, names, and places, when it says that verse, that's the verse we're talking about in Deuteronomy 28, verse 68. All right, so let's continue in this particular regard. All right, that verse, yes, it is speaking of the Atlantic slave trade and not the matter of Titus of Rome. According to some, the verses between Deuteronomy 28:48 and Deuteronomy 28:68 are only in regards to the Israelites and the Romans. Some have said that the eagle that swooped down on the Israelites are the Babylonians. One thing to shut that down in respect is the fact that verse 49 says, a nation who you know not, yet the Israelites knew the Babylonians. Another may say that the language which you knew not is speaking of the Babylonians. Yet the lingua franca of the time when the Israelites and the Babylonians came in contact was Aramaic. So the time in which the Babylonians and the Israelites came in contact one with another, let's say under the kings of the later rulership of Judah, the world in their world was basically speaking Aramaic. That was the lingua franca of the people of that time. Let's go on, brothers and sisters, to the next slide. Let's go, Israel. History and prophecy. Aramaic is the language that the maternal side of the Israelites spoke. Some kings of Israel have Aramaic names. This must be understood from 3 points: biblical, historical, and lingual. I want to state that the recent attacks online, like the Facebook and other YouTube channels, by the Christians to the Israelites in regard to our claim of Deuteronomy 28, verse 68, is only to support the religion of Christianity to have a foothold. Because if we're saying we're the children of the Most High, then who Christianity says is the only begotten Son of God cannot hold the same kind of weight. So when they come at the Israelites, there is a reason why they're doing that. They're trying to uphold Christianity. Next slide. Thank you. Part 2. Deuteronomy 28, verse 45 says, and all these curses shall come upon thee, and shall pursue thee and overtake thee, till thou be destroyed, because thou didst not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to keep his commandments and his statutes which he commanded thee. The fact remains that it says all these curses. Thus we must read what the curses are to gain an understanding. The claim made that verses from 48 to verse 68 is that it only happened in the matter of the Israelites and the Romans. Part 3. Yet we see in Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 53. And you shall eat the fruit of your own body, the flesh of thy sons and of thy daughters, whom the Lord thy God hath given thee, in the siege and in the straitness, wherewith thine enemy shall straiten thee. In the book of 2 Kings, chapter 6, verse 24, we see, and it came to pass after this, that Ben-Hadad, king of Aram, gathered all his hosts, and went up and besieged Samaria. Samaria, the capital of the northern kingdom, was besieged. This occurred in the 9th century BCE. We see that the people were besieged and ate their children. Let's go, if we will, to 2 Kings, chapter 6, verse 24. All right, so we can reread it so we can gain an understanding of what we're talking about. 2 Kings, brothers and sisters, chapter 6, verse 24. And it says the following. And it came to pass after this that Ben-Hadad, king of Syria, gathered all his hosts and went up and besieged Samaria. And there was a great famine in Samaria, and behold, they besieged it until an ass's head was sold for 4 pieces of silver, and a fourth part of cob of dove's dung for 5 pieces of silver. And as the king of Israel was passing by upon the wall, there cried a woman unto him, saying, Help, my lord, O king. And he said, If the Lord doth not help thee, where shall I help thee? Out of the barn floor or out of the winepress? And the king said unto her, What aileth thee? And she said, This woman said unto me, Give thy son that we may eat him today, and we will eat my son tomorrow. So we boiled my son and did eat him. That's in the book of 2 Kings, chapter 6, where the people were speaking about them boiling their son and eating him because of the famine. Now, Deuteronomy 28, verse 53, it says what? In the siege and in the straitness wherein thy enemy shall straiten thee, you shall eat the fruit of your own body, the flesh of your sons and of your daughters. Brothers and sisters, that happened, and it began to happen, as we just read, brothers and sisters, in the time of Ben-Hadad, king of the Arameans. Syria and Aram is the same thing, okay? That's, brothers and sisters, in the 9th century BCE. So how, if we're looking at their stance, that Deuteronomy 28, verse 48 to 68 only happened between the matter of the Israelites and the Romans, how do we see that prophecy or part of it happening? Because 53, the 53rd verse, is between 48 and 68. I'll tell you why. Because they didn't think somebody was going to scrutinize the scriptures, scrutinize history, get into some kind of linguistics, understand what's going on by the word and the spirit of the Most High. They're operating on another spirit. If you do not serve the Most High, if you do not acknowledge that Yod He Wahid, the Most High, the Creator, is your Lord and Savior, is your King and your Redeemer, then there's no way you can understand His word and His prophecy. If you're calling on another God, there's no way you can understand the words of the Most High God. Let's go on. Part 4. Deuteronomy 28:62 says, And you shall be left few in number, whereas you were as the stars of heaven for multitude, because thou didst not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God. So here we see that the people of Israel will be left few in number. In the book of 2 Kings, chapter 10, verse 32, we see this. In those days, the Lord began to cut Israel short, and Hazael smote them in all the borders of Israel. Again, we see the Israelites cut short in numbers, and that is before the era of the Israelites and the Romans. Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 62, is between the verses that the Christian apologists say could have only happened between the Israelites and the Romans, when such as saying the Most High will begin to cut you short and leave you few in number. But we see it happening right in the book of 2 Kings chapter 10. There were no Romans around in the Israelite history in the book of 2 Kings. Let's go on to the next slide, part 5. In Deuteronomy 28:63, we see, and it shall come to pass that as the Lord rejoice over you to do you good and to multiply you, so the Lord will rejoice over you to cause you to perish and to destroy you, and you shall be plucked from off the land, whether thou goest in to possess it. We see here that the Israelites were told that they would be plucked from off the land they went to possess. In the book of Isaiah, chapter 1, verse 7, we read, your country is desolate, your cities are burned with fire, your land, strangers devour it in your presence, and it is desolate as overthrown by floods. Psalm 79, verse 7, we read, for they have devoured Jacob and laid waste his habitation. Psalms 124 in parts, then the waters had overwhelmed us. The stream had gone over our soul. Then the proud waters had gone over our soul. What are we saying? That the waters going over and taking the people in a flood are the nations. Your country is desolate. Your cities are burned with fire. Your land, strangers devour it in your presence. And it is desolate as overthrown by floods. Psalm 79. For they, meaning the nations, have devoured Jacob and laid waste his habitation. So when we see that the place is laid desolate, waste, desolate in Isaiah 1, waste in Psalm 79, burnt with fire, waste, laid waste, burn it to the ground, like it says that Esau said, burn it, raise it to the ground. In Psalms 137, we can begin to see what we're talking about in this particular regard. Psalms 124 in parts. Then the waters, meaning the nations, had overwhelmed us. The stream had gone over our soul. Then the proud waters had gone over our soul. So the floods, the waters that came over the souls of the house of Israel are the nations that subdued the house of Jacob. Let's go on. Part 6. The above shows us that the waters in Psalms 124 and the floods in Isaiah 1 verse 7 are nations that Psalm 79 verse 7 states have devoured Jacob and laid waste his habitation. The point is that all this happened before the time of the Israelites and the Romans. It is the thought of the Christian who comes against the Israelites in the matter of Deuteronomy 28, verse 68, that it all began from verse 48 with the Romans and ended with the Romans. If we remember that Deuteronomy 28, verse 45 says, all these curses shall pursue and overtake thee, we can see it began to happen while Israel was still in the land. Part 7, Daniel chapter 9, verse 11 says, yea, all Israel have transgressed thy law, and have turned aside, so as to not hearken to thy voice. So there have been poured out upon us the curse and the oath that is written in the law of Moses, the servant of God, for we have sinned against him. So, as we see in the book of Daniel, that Israel was going through the curses that's written in the law of Moses. We explain that the curses began to happen before the Israelites and the Romans encountered each other. Deuteronomy 28 verse 63 says the people will be plucked from off the land whether they went to possess. So when you see in the book of Daniel, which dates to the era of the Medo-Persian Empire or the empire under the Medes and the Persians, you still begin the people saying that the oath, the curse and the oath that's written in the law of Moses, such as, i.e., example, Deuteronomy 28. So this is what we want to point out for edification purposes. Then in Deuteronomy 28, verse 64, we see, and the Lord shall scatter thee among all peoples, from the one end of the earth even to the other end of the earth. And there thou shalt serve other gods which thou hast not known, thou nor thy fathers, even wood and stone. From the plucking, in verse 63, we see the Israelites were scattered in verse 64, from one end of the earth to the other end of the earth. Then in Deuteronomy 28, verse 65, we see, and among these nations thou shalt have no repose, and there shall be no rest for the sole of thy foot, but the Lord shall give thee there a trembling heart, and failing of eyes, and languishing of soul. So, we see it went from the plucking to being scattered, to worshiping idols, to having no rest for the sole of your foot. The no rest for the sole of your foot means one is a nomad. You are always moving about. This being after the plucking and scattering happened. The people who say Deuteronomy 28 from verse 48 to verse 68 is only about the Israelites and the Romans do not explain why verse 65 says among these nations, plural. Next slide. Let us understand some dates. Assyria took Israel in 721 BCE. Some, as we stated earlier, state 722 BCE. Babylon defeated Assyria in 609 BCE. Babylon took Judah in 586 BCE. Persia defeated Media in 550 BCE and defeated Babylon in 538 BCE. Some people say 539 BCE. Persia allowed some Israelites to go back to the land in 538 BCE. Persia defeated by Greece in 331 BCE. Greece, under the matter after Alexander, the Ptolemies having ruled over Israel, the Israelites, from 320 BCE until 198 BCE, when Scopas was defeated by Antiochus III in what they call the Pinion Battle. Greece lost to Rome in two parts. In 168 BCE, in the Pydna battle when Paulus defeated Perseus. One in 146 BCE when Mummius defeated the Greeks in the Third Corinth battle. This is why I refer to this. If you remember earlier, we spoke about the Israelites in the Karkar battle and how they related to the world with that. Now we're going over the aspect of what happened. Israelites not even being in this war, but these wars affecting the Israelites between the Romans and the Greeks. Let's go on to the next slide. Part 10. According to Tacitus, the Roman historian, we see it was Pompey who was the first Roman to gain entry into the temple in Jerusalem. Pompey made Jerusalem a Roman province in 63 BCE. After him, it was Julius Caesar. Then we get to Augustus, then Tiberius, then Caligula. Caligula conflicted with the Israelites, however, and he was assassinated in 41 AD. Then we see Claudius. The matter of Claudius from 41 through 51 AD becomes interesting since some say that the Jews were in Egypt already, in Alexandria, which was a city in Egypt. And during the era of Tiberius Alexander, who was an Israelite who did not want to keep the laws of Israel, who died in 70 AD, there were Jews/Israelites already in Egypt prior to the timing of 70 AD who were killed. Tiberius Alexander died in 70 AD. Thus, there had to be Israelites in Egypt, that is to say in Northeast Africa in part, prior to the timing of 70 AD. So to try to use Tiberius Alexander as a catalyst, saying like that's the last Israelite on earth and once he was killed, that was it, is incorrect. Brothers and sisters, we stated earlier, get your pens, get your pads for this kind of presentation. Part 11. After the matter with Claudius, we see Nero, and he died in 68 AD. But he had sent Vespasian to go against the Israelites who had conquered the lands known as Jotapata, Gabala, and Samaria. He and his son Titus in 69 AD agreed that Titus could stay in Israel, the land, while he, Vespasian, his father, went back to Rome to try to become emperor. When the timing happened that he took Jerusalem, he did so, and this is recorded in Josephus and in Tacitus. Titus, the Roman leader, according to some, took Israelites from Israel, the land, to the land of Egypt. Yet no one has shown evidence of such. Josephus, in his book called Wars of the Jews, book 6, chapter 9, does not say he shipped them to Egypt. It says in Josephus' Wars of the Jews, book 7, chapter 5, that the triumph, that is to say the people to show that he won, all right, used as a triumph to show evidence that he was a successor, or succeeded, that was left in Egypt was shipped. That is to say, was sailed to Italy. The book of Josephus, we want to point out, Wars of the Jews, book 7, chapter 5, states that the people that were already in Egypt, who were Israelites, were shipped to Italy. According to both Josephus and Lionel Furtwängler in his book, The Jew of Rome, we see that Titus crossed the desert. The Sinai Desert. It was not necessary to use ships, though in ancient times some did. The point is that many people are trying to say, oh, Titus used the ship because it was easier. I'm going to put also in the description of this the video that I did concerning the European Jews, like Rabbi Meza, a Jewish guy, and so forth, that tried to go against who he refers to as the black, who we call ourselves the Israelites. One thing I want to point out is that the Bible says the matter of Deuteronomy 28:68, after we read of the scattering and the plucking, they were scattered after being plucked, then worshipped idols, then did not have assurance of their life, then sent to Egypt in ships. We want to explain that Egypt to the Israelites is not a good place in regards to the Torah, but it must be emphasized to have Christianity blossom. The knowledge of the true Israelites cannot exist. The Son of the Most High is Israel. For Christianity to blossom, the name of Israel must not be in remembrance anymore. It must be cut off. The Christians who are attacking the Israelites on the matter of Deuteronomy 28, verse 68, are basically fighting to keep Christianity alive. Brothers and sisters, let's go to part 3. Israelites, according to the Romans and according to scholars. Now, what you're looking at on the right-hand side, it says the book, Lost Tribes of Myth by Dr. Alan Godby, Duke University Press, 1930. He says there that the image that you see there is Judean Hebrews from Upper Senegal, West Africa. There's all kinds of claims about the Israelites scattering into West Africa. There are people in West Africa today who talk about such. So this is something we just want to point out for edification purposes. What you're looking at on the right-hand side, brothers and sisters, is an image the Romans made of the Israelites. We see what they're looking like. Next slide. To set a record straight regarding teaching on Hebrew in the past. Shalom. Now, as I stated in the beginning of this, we're going to talk about the black girls and their names connecting to Hebrew linguistics, all right? Or the black females, that is. Tamika, Hebrew word for support. Tanya, Hebrew word meaning jackal of God. Keisha, Hebrew word meaning bush. Shaniqua, Hebrew word meaning that which is innocent. Shakwana, Hebrew word meaning that which is bought, because the word kwana means to buy. Now, I'm looking at this right here, posted, and then once, brothers and sisters, I want your attention to be going over, if we will, all right, to the right-hand side. We see Mishael, Hebrew word meaning who is like God. Mikael, Hebrew word meaning who is like God. Ariel, Hebrew word meaning lion of God. Zuriel, Hebrew word meaning rock or strength of God. Shobab, Hebrew word meaning returning. All these names are in the scriptures. Mishael, you see that in the book of Daniel, as well as in the book of Exodus. Mikael, you see that, brothers and sisters, also inside of the book of Chronicles. All right. Ariel, you see that in the book of Isaiah. Zuriel, you see that, brothers and sisters, in the scriptures. Shobab, you also see that in Chronicles because that's one of the sons of David. So this is just something we just want to point out for edification purposes. People made up their own names. People used Hebrew to make up names. There's nothing wrong with that. And this is what we're going to point out. Because people have tried to say to me, oh, how are you going to say something like Shaniqua and Shaquana? The same way you say Mishael. Let's show how that works. Judges chapter 6, verse 16, and Ecclesiastes chapter 1, verse 11. And he said unto him, if now I have found favor in thy sight, then show me a sign that it is thou that talkest with me. Wayomer elav ina mazati kain be'enecha, wa asita li ot sha'ata medaber imi. Now, the Hebrew that you're seeing there is color-coded. Okay, you see the blue, sheen, and then the olive, tau, and hay in yellow. But that sheen, brothers and sisters, serves as a prefix, and it's coming as a broken down word from the word asher. Asher means that which is, or which is. Shah is a variant form of such. Sha or she. We see it right there, Kwamatz under the sheen, meaning that it's pronounced as Sha. Sha'ata. Ata means you or you are, if you've been following the Hebrew classes, all right? It says, Sha'ata. Then show me a sign that it is thou that talkest with me. Thou is you in Old English. Ata is thou or you in Hebrew. That it is the part that you see there in the blue. Sheen, said as Shah there. Shah is translated in Judges chapter 6, verse 16, meaning that it is. Let's go to Ecclesiastes chapter 1, verse 11, giving honor and praise to the Most High. There is no remembrance of them of former times, neither shall there be any remembrance of them of later times that are to come, among all those that shall come after. Ein zikron le rishonim, wagam la akaronim, shehichu, lo yeh lahem zikaron, im shehichu la akarona. Okay, now let's look at this right here. Also color coded. The yellow you see there is the word ihyu. The prefix of the sheen there says she. It means what? That. That which is, or that is. That's what that blue there, she, means. And on the left-hand side, it's said as Shah. So Shah or She, you see right there in biblical Hebrew. So when we go back, brothers and sisters, to this slide, and we see Shah Nikwa, Nikwa from Nakwa means innocent. All right? Shakwana, Shah meaning that which is. We see that right here with the word Shah highlighted there within the blue. So, brothers and sisters, when they feel that somebody, not to be haughty or arrogant, doesn't study or doesn't take the time into something, please don't come with a lexicon or concordance without reading the book in Hebrew yourself. Brothers and sisters, giving honor and praise unto the Most High, the Creator and the Maker of heaven and earth. Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable before thee, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer. When I say Lord, I'm talking about the Most High God, the one who created everything, the one who sees all and is not seen. Shalom, brothers and sisters. Most High bless.